Recording. Okay, so we are going to talk about the velocity analysis. Everyone understood the way we do the velocity analysis is very simple. So what we do is from the Jacobian, from the homogeneous transformation, we find out Px, Py, and Pz. And Px, Py, and Pz are the positions of the end effector. These positions of the end effector are function of joint variables. So you will have f1, I'm going to say theta 1, comma theta 2. You're going to have f2, which is theta 1, comma theta 2. And you're going to have fz, which is f3, theta 1, comma theta 2. And then what we want to do is we want to express this as px dot, py dot, and pz dot. Now I want you to pay attention to something very important here. So I want you to understand that theta is a function of time. So theta 1 is a function of time. Theta 2 is a function of time. But we want px to be differentiated with time, d by dt of px. What that means is since function f1 is dependent on two independent variables at this point. So px, which is function f1, that is the function of theta 1 and theta 2. If you want to differentiate, you have to use the chain rule. And that chain rule is something like this: partial f1. So I'll write this down here. So partial f1 divided by partial theta 1 multiplied by theta 1 dot plus partial f1 divided by partial theta 2 multiplied by theta 2 dot. And when you are doing partials, please note at this point theta 1 is theta 2 is treated as constant, and at this point theta 1 is treated as constant. That's why it's a partial derivative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write these equations something like this. So px dot is equal to partial f1 by partial theta 1 dot plus partial f1 by partial theta 2 dot py dot is equal to partial f2 divided by partial theta 1 dot plus partial f2 by partial theta 2 dot, and last but not least pz dot is equal to partial f3 divided by partial theta 1 dot plus partial f3 divided by partial theta 2 dot. Can you see the pattern? The pattern here is if you want to differentiate, you want to take the partial derivatives. Now I'm going to write down something like this in a matrix form. So please note there is theta 1 dot, theta 1 dot, theta 2 dot, theta 2 dot, theta 2 dot. So this entire equation can be written as px dot, py dot, pz dot is equal to a matrix multiplied by theta 1 dot theta 2 dot. And this equation, this matrix now needs to be populated, and this will be partial f1 by partial theta 1, partial f1 by partial theta 2, partial f2 by partial theta 1, partial f2 by partial theta 2, partial f3 by partial theta 1, partial f3 by partial theta 2. So when you expand this, you get equation 1, equation 2, and equation 3. Everyone understood this? This is called as the Jacobian. This guy is called as Jacobian. Now, concept of Jacobian is very simple. If you think about, if you have a function and if you want to find out the slope, if you want to find out the slope, how would you find it? You basically draw a tangent line, which is nothing but the definition of derivative. But in this particular case, you have a function y that is dependent on x. So y is function of x. But in the case of Jacobian, this concept of derivative is extended when you have two or more independent variables. So think about it. If your y is dependent on x and z, the total change in y will be contributed by some change in x and some change in z. Everyone understood this? Since, okay. Okay. Let me see. Okay, say salary. Salary is function of experience and education. Do you agree with me? Now, if I want to do something like this, I want my salary to increase. This increase in salary can be achieved by, or change in the salary, so delta salary will be achieved by change in the experience or delta experience, or getting more experience, or getting higher education. Okay, well, this is actually a true example. So now the question is, what should I do? I want my salary to increase. Should I go and get more experience, or should I go and get more education? It really depends upon the job that I'm doing. For an example, function is the requirement of the job. If my job only requires me to be a carpenter, then perhaps if I get, or just a mechanic, or just a technician, so if I work more, I become expert, get more experience, and my salary would go up. So in other words, this equation can be written in form of the derivative. The rate of change of function, which is partial f by partial experience multiplied by change in the experience, plus partial f divided by partial education multiplied by change in the education. And if you think about it, these are sort of the weighing factors, so important factor. So in some jobs, the experience is more important. So basically, this partial f by partial experience is gonna be more, or bigger number. In some jobs, like surgery, education is very important. So you need to have a higher delta in education. In some jobs, both of those are equally important. So basically you can get a higher salary by increasing the experience and increasing the education. So experience and education are independent variables, just like theta 1 and theta 2. And the salary is like px, py, pz, and the function or the job that you are doing is something like a function. A classic example is, if you just want to go a little bit further, I can say y is equal to x square plus z. Now what I want to do is I want to find out y dot. To find y dot, please note, if you take the derivative, this will be 2x x dot plus z dot. You agree with me? So what it means is now your y, which is the dependent variable, is a function of two independent variables, x and z. So the total change in the dependent variable is nothing but the change of the function with respect to independent variable multiplied by change in the independent variable itself. Everyone understood this? Did you understand? Did you understand? Okay, good. Okay, the next thing which I want to talk about is what is this concept of Jacobian. So you will see this all the time. In the case of robotics, Jacobian, if you look at the Jacobian is going to relate end effector velocities. These are EE velocities with respect to the joint velocities. So if you think about it, Px is the position of the end effector, Py is the position of end effector in y coordinate, and Pz is the position of end effector in z coordinate along z. So, but theta 1 dot and theta 2 dot, these are body coordinates. So basically theta 1 is about that z, actually z naught, and maybe theta 2 is about z1. Please note, px, py, and pz, they are not about z1. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to relate the joint rotations or joint velocities or joint coordinates in terms of inertial velocities, inertial inertial angular velocities and inertial translational velocities. So what that means is this coordinate system here is x naught, y naught, and z naught. Everyone understood this? We are not studying theory of relativity. So our positions and velocities are going to be in absolute coordinates, not in relative coordinates. Everyone understood this? No? Okay. All right. So ask this question, okay? Okay, all right. Let me give you an example. Imagine there's a cart and there is a ball on the cart. Now, so cart is moving and ball is also moving. So let me start with the very first and super simple case. So if I say the velocity of the ball is 3 meters per second, velocity of the cart is 5 meters per second, and now I want you to tell me, actually, you can think about this ball is sliding, not rolling, okay? Just sliding. I'll take the rolling example in just a second. Ball is sliding. So basically it's sliding like this, not rolling, sliding, not rolling. So if I ask you, what is the kinetic velocity of the ball? What would you tell me? You will say the equation is 1/2 mv square. Now, kinetic velocity in the relative frame, relative means relative to the cart. Kinetic velocity relative to the cart is 1/2 mass of the ball multiplied by 3 square. Do you agree with me? Because it's a relative speed. Yeah, that basically this is, so 3 is basically 3 with respect to 5. That's what I mean by that. So ball is not, it's not an absolute speed. So and I think that needs, so basically what you have is, if you have a speedometer attached over here, if you have a speedometer attached over here, this speedometer is going to read 3, this speedometer is going to read 5. So the kinetic energy of this ball is 1/2 mv square. That is in that ball's reference frame. Okay, but the really, in reality, the kinetic energy has to be with respect to some datum, some fixed frame. So the total kinetic energy, because with respect to this frame has kinetic energy is equal to 0. That's why it's fixed. So the total kinetic energy is going to be 3 plus 5, 8. And the total kinetic energy of the ball, in, that's why I'm writing this in blue, is going to be is 1/2 m times 8 square. Remember this. Whenever we derive the equations in Newtonian mechanics, or for that matter, the Lagrangian mechanics in this class, we will use the equation summation of F is equal to mass times acceleration. All these quantities will be absolute, no relative. So the acceleration will be with respect to a frame that is fixed to the ground. Forces will also be with respect to some frame that is fixed to the ground. This mass is a scalar, so it doesn't matter. Mass of the ball, whether you consider that actually in terms of Newtonian mechanics, it's going to be fixed. Everyone understood this? This is super duper important. Any other questions? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, for my own satisfaction, I'm going to work out a couple of examples on Jacobian, because once you are familiar with the Jacobian and finding the angular velocities, that would actually be super duper important. But before I go there, let's assume that this ball is rolling and sliding. And this actually happens in most of the robotic systems. So this ball is rolling and sliding. Now my question to you is, if I say this velocity is v1, this velocity is v2, and this guy is rotating at omega 1, what is the total kinetic energy of that ball, considering that ball is simultaneously rolling and sliding? So I'll start with the easy part. So sliding, everyone clear about sliding? Now same argument applies to rolling. Is this cart rolling? Is this cart rolling? No, which means the omega cart is equal to 0. Do you agree with me? That's why the kinetic energy is going to be 1/2 I, which is the moment of inertia multiplied by omega 1 square. Everyone understood this? Now let me extend this problem to a robotic system.
Won't the ball have linear velocity even if it's rolling? Even if it's not sliding?
Yeah.
What we consider then? We don't need to consider.
No. Wait. Ball has linear velocity if it is
rolling.
So rolling is a very complicated dynamical phenomenon. Very interesting. So please try to understand. There are two ways. Actually, there are three ways this ball can go forward. Ball can slide with omega is equal to 0. Ball can slide. So it has just pure velocity. Ball can slide and roll. And I give you an example. Slide and roll. Imagine that your vehicle is, you are going on a straight path, you are driving the car. That's pure rolling. All of a sudden you hit the brake, the tires screech, and the wheels are also rotating. Wheels don't stop, they are rotating, but you have sliding and rolling. Sometimes you hit your brakes so hard that the wheel stops rotating, but the whole car kind of slides and you get tire marks in the road. So that is pure sliding. So you could have pure sliding, you could have pure rolling, so some non-zero value, and you could have rolling and sliding. Everyone understood this? So that is what is possible. So you could have rolling, so you could have some non-zero. So you would have non-zero rolling, and you can have V, or actually, let me extend this example for the robot. Say, for an example, you have a robot arm, and this will all make sense once we start solving the problems. You have a robot arm. Now, what we want to do is, we want to find out, and this is the end effector. This is link 1, and this is link 2. And this robot arm looks something like this. If you look at this robot arm in top view, it's going to look something like this. So maybe you will have one more joint, something like this. This guy is fixed. So this is your Z1, Z0, and Z1. And this is how your end effector would look like. This will be your end effector. Now the key question is, I want to find out the total kinetic energy. Now the total kinetic energy, and this is very important because we will do this a lot next class onwards. So please understand, there is link 1. So there is M1, there is M2. This is the center of gravity of link 1. This is the center of gravity of link 2. Every link has its own center of gravity. Do you remember the Jacobian and equations that we derived? So if this was, I'm going to say theta 1 dot, and this was theta 2 dot. What I want to do is, I want to write down the kinetic energy of this robot arm. Do you agree with me? There are two links with two masses. So there will be, this is super important, so please pay attention. So the total kinetic energy is kinetic energy of mass M1 plus kinetic energy of mass M2. Do you agree with me? Now, please understand that let's try to visualize what type of velocities these links have. Everyone agrees with me that this will have a velocity like this, and maybe this will have a velocity like this. So this is V1, and I'm going to call this V2. Do you agree with me? So can I say that kinetic energy of mass M1 is 1/2 M1 V1 square plus kinetic energy of mass M2 is 1/2 M2 V2 square. This is super important, okay? Once you understand this, what we are going to do is we are going to write these equations inside the MATLAB script, and MATLAB script will derive the differential equation, solve the differential equation, and will give you nice plots that you can actually interface with some Simulink modeler and then see the robot moving. But is that it? Am I missing something? So please understand, correct. So this is something super important that I want you to understand. What, and this is, understand this. What is the kinetic energy of point A? What is kinetic energy of point A? Because the radius is 0, the velocity is 0. So what it means is, as the radius increases, linear velocity increases. As the radius increases, the linear velocity increases. And what I mean by that is something like this. So here, this distance is r1. This is going to be omega 1 r1. This is going to be, say, if this is r2, is going to be omega 1 r2. So the linear velocity is going to change. Do you agree with me? What happens with angular velocity? Omega is remaining same. Omega 1, pardon me? Omega 1 is constant. So what it means is, to these two lengths, you have a linear velocity, but in addition to the linear velocity, you have a rotational velocity, which is 1/2. I'm gonna call I1 omega 1 square and 1/2 I2 omega 2 square. Everyone understood this?
Omega 2 we only.
No. Yes. Just I'm getting this. Just a second. So now the question is, how do we find out the value of V1 and how do we find out the value of V2? Remember the homogeneous transformations that we derived? When we derived the homogeneous transformations, we found out the velocity at the end effector, right? But what I can do is I can use the same homogeneous transformations to find out the velocities at location B and location D. And I'll show you how it can be done. So essentially you can find out the velocities at V1, velocity at V2. Now, what about omega 1? Omega 1, remember how we derived omega 1? 0 r0 multiplied by 0 0 theta 1 dot, and this gave me omega 1 as theta 1, so this becomes theta 1 dot square. This is what we did in last class. Omega 2, how did we do omega 2? Omega 2 is 0 r0 0 0 theta 1 dot plus 0 r1 0 0 theta 2 dot, and omega 2 became theta 1 plus theta 2. So omega square became theta 1 dot, theta 2 dot square. This is exactly same as the ball on the cart. Imagine if the cart starts rolling and the ball is rolling on the cart, total angular velocity will be the angular velocity of the cart plus the angular velocity of the ball. Everyone understood this? But story doesn't end here. Right now, all the coordinate frames are aligned and everything is good. So the math works out very nicely that we can visualize. But in certain cases, the math will not be as straightforward as this. But at the end, we need to know the total kinetic energy. Question? We need to find out the total kinetic energy. Now, next thing, okay, before I proceed, any questions, discussion on this? I would caution you because you need to understand this material very carefully. Otherwise, you'll feel that the course is gonna go at light speed. because in next class or next few classes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some examples of robots that we looked at, find the kinetic energy, find the potential energy, and put it in that MATLAB script. And MATLAB script will do the integration. It will also create a Simulink block that you can interface with if you have a model with your model. Yeah.
Professor, so I'm understanding what you're giving us, each portion, but are you going to be able to put everything together and show us in one, for example, just one problem?
Oh, many problems. Don't worry, not just one. One problem won't cut it.
I'm having trouble understanding how to put everything together in one.
Yes. Welcome to my world.
Like right now, the mass we even include the weight of the motor, right? Real load.
For the time being, let's live in an ideal world where motor masses are neglected. But we can add the motor masses later. But once you add those motor masses, you have to do the inertia transfers and all that kind of stuff. But right now, for the time being, my assumption is the mass of the link is significantly larger than the mass of the motor. So the mass of the motor can be neglected. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to take few examples. And actually, I want to write the velocities and the Jacobian and take this opportunity to think about how we can derive the kinetic energies, because in all the problems, this is going to be our central theme. If I give you a dynamical system problem, for an example, assignment 4 or assignment 5, you are given a robot. What you should do is do the forward kinematics. Once you are done with forward kinematics, do the velocity analysis. Find all the linear and angular velocities, and then find out the total kinetic energy of that manipulator. And then we'll find the total potential energy. Potential energy is super simple. We'll find the total potential energy. Once you have the total kinetic energy, and once you have the total potential energy, your job is done. Even if it's a 10 degree of robot arm with very complicated structure, the MATLAB would solve that, create the script, use OD45, plot it, and give you the answer. And to be honest with you, it's not possible to actually solve those differential equations of motion by hand because they are going to be non-linear. Anyway, that being said, so let me start with the case simple. Last time we looked at R parallel R robot. So now let me do, and
Excuse
believe it or
me,
not,
Professor.
yeah.
We have some questions in the chat.
What is L is the length, or I?
I, yeah.
I1 is called as mass moment of inertia. So for what do I mean by mass moment of inertia? So if you have a mass that is located at the length L, so I is mass multiplied by radius of gyration square. Why it is called radius of gyration? Gyration means rotating or moving or dancing. So this mass is dancing about this hinge at distance L. So this L is called as radius of gyration. The other thing I want to tell you is, in this case, it's very simple because the mass is located at one end of the rod, and this rod is assumed to be massless. But when you have the mass that is distributed, you will have to perform integration, and then the equations, they change. Everyone understood this? Number next to RO. Oh, this is theta 1 dot. So this is this came from, so what I want to do is I want to find out omega 1 and I want to find out omega 2. So this is what we did in last few lessons. Any other questions did I miss? So This is 0R0, 0R1. And I think I pointed this out because this is theta 2. This is about Z2. This is about G1. Actually, this is about Z0. This is about Z0. This is about Z1. Yeah. Okay, so let me take a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the problem that we have solved multiple times, but I'm not going to derive homogeneous transformations or anything. We will directly go in deriving the velocities, linear velocities, and angular velocities, and then we will try to find out the kinetic energy, because that is a very important aspect of solving robot problems. So please pay attention. And if you don't understand, ask me now, because if you don't follow this, you will unfortunately be left behind. So remember this famous robot, you have R and R. This R perpendicular to R. And we derive the equations for this guy. So I'm not going to start with the coordinate system and all, but I'm pretty sure that you have this solution in your notes. And what we did, we actually derived, this is the end effector, we derived the positions of the end effector. This is, say, theta 1. This is theta, so yeah, theta 2. And then what we want to do is we want to solve this problem. So remember, we found out 0R1, then we found out 0H1, then we found out 1R2, then we found out 1H2, and finally we found out 0H2 is equal to 0H1 multiplied by 1H2. Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, finally, what we did, this 0H2 had a rotational transformation, which was 0R2, and there was Px, Py, and Pz. So I'm just going to write Px, Py, and Pz, and you can compare if that answer that I'm writing here is the same answer that we got. And I think we use MATLAB to solve this problem. So Px is equal to this distance is A2, this distance is A1, Px is equal to A2 cosine theta 2 cosine theta 1, Py is equal to A2 cosine theta 2 sine theta 1, and Pz is equal to A1 plus A2 sine theta 2. Everyone understood this? Yeah.
Okay, so just to make sure, when we get to this point, Professor, this is where we have to find Px and Y, like what theta 1 and theta 2 is, or like what, when we get to this point, do we have to get our MATLAB basically is what I'm trying to ask, or do we continue on and figure out.
You can solve the entire problem in MATLAB. That's totally up to you. So I will show you both the techniques, solving it by hand and solving it start to end with MATLAB. That's totally fine. And you can use either ways. It's totally acceptable. But what I'm saying is, we actually solved this problem with MATLAB and we got Px, Py, and Pz with MATLAB. Right? We are actually halfway through. Okay, good. Now, what I want to do is, I want to find out Px dot. Px dot A2 is a constant, theta 2 is a function of time, theta 1 is a function of time. So this is going to become A2 minus sine theta 2 dot cosine theta 1 plus A2 minus sine theta 1 dot cosine theta 2. So I just used the chain rule. Same thing for the second guy, Py dot is A2 is going to be constant, cosine theta 2, the derivative of cosine theta 2 is minus sine theta 2 multiplied by the derivative of theta 2, which is theta 2 dot sine theta 1 plus, then I would have A2 cosine theta 2, sine theta 1 becomes cosine theta 1 dot. Pz dot is A1 is a constant, so it becomes 0. A2 is a constant, so comes out A2 cosine theta 2 dot. Are you with me so far? Now what I need to do is, I need to write this down, something like this. Px dot, Py dot, Pz dot. There will be a big matrix here. And here, there will be theta 1 dot, theta 2 dot. Tell me, what should I write here? And how do I find that out? So yeah, let me explain this just a second, because last time I think I went a little bit quick. So look at the first equation for Px dot. In Px dot, please find out where is theta 1 dot. Can you see theta 1 dot is here? Oh, sorry, yeah, correct. Not this one. Theta 1 dot. Okay, so yeah. So in Px dot, here is theta 1 dot. So whatever is multiplying theta 1 dot needs to go here, which is A2 minus sine theta 1 cosine theta 2. So what I do is, when I multiply first row, first column, I get this term. The second thing is this, and that needs to go here. Oh, cos theta 1, yeah. Sine theta cos, yeah, cos theta.
No.
So just a second, sine theta 2 minus cosine theta 1, right? Okay. Now for Py dot is, again, I'm gonna go look for theta 1 dot, and then this guy needs to come here. A2 cosine theta 2 cosine theta 1. Then this guy needs to come here. A2 sine theta 2 sine theta 1, the negative sign. And in the last row, Pz dot, it's just theta 2 dot, so there will be a big 0 here. And then A2 cosine theta 2. Okay, and this guy is the Jacobian matrix. Story does not end here. Still, we need to find out omega, the total omega x, omega y, omega z. But the strategy is same: omega x, omega y, and omega z. But before I actually work out these equations, I want to ask you this: px dot, py dot, and pz dot. These velocity is a vector. So vector is going to need a direction. Direction means it's going to need a coordinate. So in which coordinate system px dot, py dot, and pz dot are expressed? Base frame or the inertial frame. So you agree with me, this guy is in z naught, and I think this is x naught, and this is y naught. Do you agree with me? Same thing has to happen here. So you need to have this omegas expressed in z naught, y naught, and x naught. You agree with me? Now, what are we going to do here? So here is the trick. So you have two joints, and good news here is both the joints are rotary joints. So you have a theta 1 dot and you have a theta 2 dot. You agree with me? Theta 1 dot is about z naught. So I'm going to write down here 0, 0, theta 1 dot plus. Then theta 2 dot is about z1. So 0, 0, theta 2 dot. And for this problem, I'm going to write this down, okay? This is super important. Let me show you the frame, z1. So this guy is, actually this is about z0. This is about z0. So this is super important. This is z0. Okay, but this is something I want you to note, that this guy is about let me see, I drew the coordinate system. Yeah. So this is about z1. Can you see? Which means theta 1 dot is in about z0, theta 2 dot is about z1. What is the difference between this situation and the previous situation? Previous situation is like when you had, yeah, something like this. So this robot, in this robot, z0 and z1 were one and the same. They were parallel, right? But here, your z1 or z0 and z1, they are not parallel. They are perpendicular. So what it means, that there is going to be a rotational transformation that is going to take care of, very important, transferring theta 2 dot, which is about z1, to theta 2 dot, which will be about z0. I repeat this once again, and it will be super duper clear. Do you agree with me? This is going to be 0 r 0, and this is going to be 0 r 1. This notation is telling me that the quantity here is in the 0th coordinate frame, right? Notation here is telling me that the quantity here is in the 1st coordinate frame, and this guy is telling me that after this rotational transformation, the quantity which was in 0th frame got transferred to the 0th frame. Quantity which was in the 1st frame got transferred into 0th frame. Everyone understood this? So at the end, what do I have? I have everything here in Z0, X0, Y0. So after I do this transformation, what happens is this theta2 dot gets projected. Theta2 dot gets projected on Z0. Everyone understood this? And this will be very important. So how does this process work? So you have found out 0R0. What is 0R0? 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. Do you agree with me? We also found out 0R1 when we derived the homogeneous transformation 0H1. 0R1. So remember, we derived 0R1. That 0R1 needs to go here, and I will give you that value. Cosine theta 1, 0, sine theta 1, sine theta 1, 0, minus cosine theta 1, 0, 1, 0. Now, what you do is you add them together. So can you see omega x, first row, first column? So product of these guys gives me 0. Do you agree with me? And product of these guys gives me sine theta 1, theta 2 dot. First row. Huh? Yeah, but theta 1 dot gets multiplied with 0. I'm looking for omega x. So, okay. No, okay. First row, first column. 1 times 0, 0 times 0, 0 times theta 1 dot. I got 0. If you have any questions, ask away. Okay. Omega y, same logic. Second row, first column. What happens here? 0. 0 times 0, 1 times 0, 0 times theta 1 dot. Agreed? What happens here? Second row, minus cosine theta 1, theta 2 dot. Are you with me? Omega z, theta 1 dot plus 0. I don't know if you understand what exactly happened here, but I will actually give you a hint. So imagine that you have a vector, okay, and what you want to do is you want, and I'm gonna just write this theta 1. Yeah, actually I can write this theta 1 just like this. The only thing is this vector is in the opposite direction, but I'll try to tell you what's happening. So if this is theta 1, if this is vector f, this is your x, this is your y. Agree with me, this would be f cosine theta 1, this would be f sine theta 1. Do you agree with me? Just like that, angular velocity is also a vector. So that angular velocity vector got resolved around about x and about y. Are you with me so far? Now then, some of you may ask me, why do you have a negative sign? And the reason for this negative sign is quite obvious. Yeah. Question. Oh no, because I was gonna say that this Z1 and Z2, they are out of alignment. So if you were to look at the projection, if you were to look from top, you will see that your Z, so you have Z1 and Z2. So you have something like this. And it may be difficult to see, but what I'm trying to show you here is stand here and look from here. And you would notice that the angular velocity vector that you're trying to resolve is in this coordinate frame. That's why you have that negative sign. But trust me, as long as you follow this procedure correctly, the signs will take care of themselves. Now, here comes the question. What happens when theta 1 is 0? What happens when theta 1 is 0? When theta 1 is 0, sine theta 1 is going to be 0 and cosine theta 1 is going to be 1. So now I want you to visualize a situation where there is some non-zero theta 1 dot. I mean, just a beginning. So theta 1 is 0, but there is some non-zero theta 1 dot. And essentially you would notice that in that case, the total rotation, the angular velocity will be the angular velocity about Z naught axis theta 1 dot and the angular velocity about omega y, which would be minus theta 2 dot. Does it make sense or no? No. Yeah. I'll explain it in just a second because I did not draw the figure that would have helped you. So this is x0, this is y0. You agree with me? Omega x is about x0. Omega y is about y0. And omega z is about z0. You agree with me? Now I want you to imagine the case. Theta 1 is 0. Okay, theta 1 is 0, but there is some non-zero theta 1 dot and non-zero theta 2 dot. When is it possible? At the beginning. So you applied some angular velocity, the motor applied some angular velocity, and for that teeny tiny fraction of time, even though theta 1 is 0, there is a non-zero theta 1 dot and a non-zero theta 2 dot. Now I want you, don't look at the mathematics, just look at the figure that we have over here. In that case, does everyone agree that the total angular velocity about Z naught, which is omega z, will be theta 1 dot? No? Yes? Can you see that? If you don't, ask me now. Once again, theta 1 is 0, which means the robot is going to be as is. Kinematic diagram is drawn when theta 1 is 0, theta 2 is 0. But assume that there is a non-zero theta 1 dot. That non-zero theta 1 dot is going to be about Z naught. So at that instant, it's going to change. But at that instant, that omega z is going to be theta 1 dot. You agree with me? That's what you have over here. Omega z is equal to theta 1 dot. Everyone understood? Now the next step that is coming is legendary. So please pay attention. Same case, theta 1 is 0. Theta 1 dot is some non-zero value. Theta 2 dot is a non-zero value. Theta 2 dot is about Z1. Do you agree with me? Curl your fingers in the direction of Z1. We see that it's coming like this way, right? But now I want to project it onto Y0. And can you see the Y0 is opposite to Z1? That's why your theta 2 dot is negative. Understood? Once again.
By finding the rotation matrices itself, it does resolve this orientation, right?
Yeah, as long as you follow the technique that we have discussed, use the rotation matrices the way we discussed, you will not have any problems in finding out the angular velocities or Jacobians. But I always try to emphasize that physical interpretation is super duper important, because just like linear velocity is a vector. So if you have a linear velocity at an angle, you can resolve a component of linear velocity about x, linear velocity about y. Similarly, angular velocity is also a vector. Angular momentum is also a vector, just like force. So you can resolve that about x and y axis. That's what these rotation matrices are doing. That's why it is super duper important that this zero should match with this zero. That's what it's doing. Okay. So with that, we can find out the kinetic energy of the end effector. So for this, just for this problem, I'm going to assume everything else is massless. Only there is a mass at the end effector. So this is the mass at the end effector. And I'm going to ask you, okay, tell me what is the kinetic energy of the end effector. What is the kinetic energy of the end effector? So it's always kinetic energy of translation plus kinetic energy of rotation. So, but please understand, this is a three-dimensional problem. Unlike the previous problem where we had a planar robot, now we have, please note, we have px dot, which is, I'm going to write this just for consistent notation. Px dot is Vx, Py dot is equal to Vy, and Pz dot is equal to Vz. So the total kinetic energy is going to become 1/2 m Vx square plus 1/2 m Vy square plus 1/2 m Vz square. This is the total kinetic energy of translation. M is the mass at the rotator end effector. The length doesn't come in this picture. Everything is massless. So I'm just saying the end effector, there is the mass is located at the end effector. Everything else is massless. Okay. So the motors are massless. Link A1 is massless. Link A2 is massless. But there is just huge, heavy gripper at the end of the end effector. So that's what this kinetic energy is all about. Now, same thing is going to happen for the rotational kinetic energy. Please note, there is omega x, there is omega y, and omega z. So you're going to have 1/2 I x omega x square plus 1/2 I y omega y square plus 1/2 I z omega z square. Everyone understood this? Now the question comes, and this is not a trivial question. I'll tell you, this is not a straightforward question. What is the value of Ixx? What is the value of Iyy? And what is the value of Izz? for a simple robot arm like this, you can easily find out. What? So just wait a second. So what I'm trying to say here is, so the very simple definition of moment of inertia is mass multiplied by the radius of gyration square. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to assume that this mass is over here, and then I'm going to see if that mass starts rotating about omega x, about z naught, about x naught, about y naught, what is going to be its moment of inertia. For a simple robot, you can do that. But if you have a complicated robot, then what you do is you go to the solid model and go to SolidWorks and then ask the SolidWorks model to calculate the moment of inertias numerically. So you will actually use some sort of numerical technique to find out these Ixx, Iyy, and Izz. And please note, this formulation makes our life super easy because there are product of inertias. So there is something called as Ixy, Ixz, and Zy. So what you have is, actually you have a moment of inertia tensor, but as far as we are concerned, we are going to derive the kinetic energies at the center of mass. We are going to derive the kinetic energies at the center of mass. And when you do that, the beauty of center of mass is the product of inertias becomes zero. But we will actually, I will work out few more examples and make these concepts super duper clear. So what I would do is, I would actually show you how you can find out the moment of inertias for simple objects. And then I will actually take you to SolidWorks or some other CAD software. And then I will show you how you can find out the moment of inertias using a CAD software. Do I ask you to do dynamic analysis for your project? Did I ask you to do any? Okay. Oh, then you don't have to do it. Okay. So now let me take one simple example. Huh? What? Yeah, actually, I want to give you a little bit more discussion on MK square and derive mass moment of inertia tensor. So what I want to tell you here is, at this point, I want you to understand is kinetic energy of translation will have three parts. Kinetic energy of rotation will have three parts. The mass m, so whether you consider in x direction, y direction, or z direction, mass is going to remain the same, but the moment of inertias Ixx, Iyy, and Izz would be different. That is the key point what I want to make.
Would it be Px or Ixx and so on?
Px, Ixx?
No, the K square.
Yeah.
Value of K square for Ixx. That would be Px.
Value of case.
Px square. Would Ixx equal m times Px square?
No.
No?
No. No. So okay, you are trying to say that if I can write down Ixx as just in terms of displacement. No. So that's why I didn't want to get into that, because I need to give you some more background on what moment of inertias are and how those moment of inertias change and all that type of stuff. But we will talk about it when we actually work out the problems using Lagrangian dynamics. But I want you to understand this setup. So what I have not discussed is essentially the only key part that I have not discussed here is how do you find out Ixx, how do you find out Iyy, and how do you find out Izz. But that's coming next. So don't worry about it. Okay, so let me take one more problem real quick. Oh, yeah. This problem is something similar to that we have solved, which is spherical wrist. In spherical wrist, remember we had a wrist like this. And even though some of you may say that this wrist looks in the gimbal lock, you're absolutely correct. I mean, if we project it vertically, it would look in a gimbal lock. When we try to solve this, we actually set this problem up something like this. Now, these relative distances are close to 0. So the only thing that we should be finding out is omega x, omega y, omega z for angular velocities. And remember, this is theta 1, this is theta 2, and I think this is theta 3. So this is going to look like 0 r0, 0 0 theta 1 dot plus 0 r1 0 0 theta 2 dot plus 0 r2 0 0 theta 3 dot. And these values you can directly grab from your rotation matrices. So this is going to be cosine theta 1 minus sine theta 1, sine theta 1, cosine theta 1, 0 0 0 0 1. So multiplied by this guy plus I have 0. Let me see if I have actually calculated that value. Unfortunately, I think I solved this problem using MATLAB. But then please understand that here you're going to have theta 1, and here the last matrix will have theta 1 and theta 2. 0 0 theta 3 dot. So key observation here is to find the projection of theta 2 dot, you will have some cosine or sine component of theta 1. To find out the projection of theta 3 dot, you will have subcomponent, the product of subcomponent of theta 1 and theta 2. So yeah, actually I made a mistake here. You're absolutely right. This is an identity matrix. 1 0 0 0 1 0. That's absolutely correct. 0 0 1. Yeah. Okay, with this I'm going to stop here.